what the details are and whether really somehow Hamas has committed itself to surrender its weapons before Israel pulls out of the 60% of Gaza. Just another point for our listeners and our viewers. The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has ordered the military to expand the security zone from 60% to 70%. And Israel has not committed itself to pull out of Gaza. So all in all, I'm a bit skeptical because I know how complex the situation is. Yeah. And I know that President Trump's announcements should not be taken at face value. We have to be very cautious.
Had a significant announcement from President Trump on Gaza. He says his Board of Peace has reached a deal that will see Hamas disarmed, as well as other Palestinian factions. It's understood these groups have agreed to a document outlining a sequential plan for transfer of powers, Israeli withdrawal, and laying down arms. We are yet to hear from Israel's government, but we can speak to Fawaz Gerges, Middle East expert and Professor of International Relations at the London School of Economics. Good morning, Fawaz.
Good morning to you.
Very good to speak to you. First of all, then, on this, is this a breakthrough, so far as we can tell?
Well, we have to be very cautious before we celebrate this kind of agreement. And the reason why, because the devil lies in the details. If you read carefully what the Board of Peace says, you realize this will take a long time, a few months, a year, 2 years. I think the major, challenge facing such a deal is, will Israel pull out of Gaza at the same time when Hamas surrenders its weapons? Israel says it will not pull out of the 60% that occupies in Gaza unless Hamas disarms and unless Gaza is demilitarized. Hamas says, well, look, we will not surrender our arms and demilitarize unless Israel pulls out of the 60% of Gaza. So what comes first? Will Israel's withdrawal of Gaza or Hamas surrenders of its weapons? There are other questions involved in terms of timetable. Will it take a few weeks, as President Trump and his advisors say, or probably, according to the Board of Peace, would take at least 9 months or a year. So we have to wait and see. We have to be cautious, even though President Trump claims that somehow a breakthrough has been achieved between Israel and Hamas.
Does it feel like there has been a really markedly different strategy from the Board of Peace when it comes to getting to this point? It's understood that those involved in negotiations, they began with changing aid distribution systems to cut off funds to Hamas while trying to limit harm to civilians, which does strike me as a contrast to perhaps the approach that Israel may have used in the past.
Well, I think really we need to tell our listeners and basically audience that the situation in Gaza has not really improved a great deal. Since the ceasefire was signed, the Board of Peace was achieved. Israel has killed more than 1,000 Palestinians and injured a few thousand. Israel attacked Gaza on almost daily basis, including last night. And the amount of humanitarian aid reaching Gaza is really almost less than 60% of what the initial agreement stipulates. And Hamas has not disarmed. So all in all, you really have what I call a limbo state of no war and no peace. And that's why I'm very skeptical. The reason I think the only hope is that Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey are playing a very, very active role in trying to persuade Hamas to surrender its weapons. So if the fact is, and also Hamas really has no light at the end of the tunnel. The strip itself has been destroyed. Almost 80% of the physical infrastructure is destroyed. And there is no life, really real life for the Palestinians. So all in all, we have to wait and see what the details are and whether really somehow Hamas has committed itself to surrender its weapons before Israel pulls out of the 60% of Gaza. Just another point for our listeners and our viewers. The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has ordered the military to expand the security zone from 60% to 70%. And Israel has not committed itself to pull out of Gaza. So all in all, I'm a bit skeptical because I know how complex the situation is. Yeah. And I know that President Trump's announcements should not be taken at face value. We have to be very cautious and see what the details, what the print, the small print says.
Yeah. Fawaz, we appreciate your analysis and your reality check, perhaps, on where we stand this morning. Thank you very much. That is Fawaz Gerges, Middle East expert and Professor of International Relations at the LSE. And so I am just seeing there's some reporting in local media in Israel that the government looks like it will reject the deal. But, of course, we wait to see what actually the official statement is. That is sources close to the Jerusalem Post. Israel rejects Hamas disarmament plan. No IDF pullout until Gaza demilitarised. That's what the Jerusalem Post says this morning. We'll see if we confirm that up.
Up here next, very hot summers. Now, international news for you now, 17 minutes past 8. Overnight, President Trump announced what he called a historic agreement to disarm Hamas and other militant groups in Gaza in exchange for the potential withdrawal of Israeli troops from the territory. He said his Board of Peace had taken a monumental step towards lasting peace and security, and added that the agreement will be carried out in carefully structured phases. As yet, there's been no official response from Israel's government. Let's speak to Noga Tarnopolsky, an Israeli journalist in Jerusalem. Noga, good morning.
Good morning.
What are you anticipating the response from Benjamin Netanyahu might be?
Well, to be honest with you, Rosie, I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to take advantage of the fact that here it's already the weekend. It's a Friday, Saturday weekend schedule here. And I think he might try and not respond, at least until Sunday morning. But we did get a taste of things last night as the rumors began to get really intense late last night that some sort of deal was in the offing. The office of the Israeli Prime Minister, not in his name, but did release a series of pretty cutting statements saying that Israel is not going to withdraw from any part of Gaza until Hamas has completely disarmed. And just to give you the opposite side of that picture, we already have Ghazi Hamad, a top Hamas official, speaking out today to Western media, and he's saying that Hamas did not agree to disarm and did not agree to lay down their arms. They simply, according to him, have agreed basically to put their armed struggle in abeyance and to put their weapons in some sort of storage facilities that will be under unclear guard for the duration of this deal. So both of the implicated sides are showing extreme skepticism. That said, we've seen this now several times with Donald Trump's deals. He makes a big, bombastic, optimistic announcement, and in general, a part of the deal is implemented. We saw that in Gaza with the ceasefire of about 9 months ago now. The Israeli hostages were released and the fighting, the day-to-day war did end. So we can't say it was an abject failure, but none of the other parts of that ceasefire deal, the 20-point plan, were implemented. So that's what's happening now. The United States is trying to move ahead, and what we're seeing is an effort to make these next steps possible.
Yeah, it's a muddled picture, Noga, isn't it? Because a senior Hamas official told the BBC they'd agreed to the Board of Peace plan. They said, I think, to another newswire as well. How difficult is it for you? Your job is to try and assess the facts here. When we get an announcement like this that sounds, I think, bombastic is the word you use, that sounds exciting and very optimistic from Donald Trump, how difficult is it to actually ascertain the reality of what's been agreed?
It's extremely difficult, and you can probably see it on my face as well. And it's all the more difficult because during this presidency of Donald Trump, we rarely, if ever, get to see the actual documents. Remember, none of us have seen, to my knowledge, a certified real copy of the Memorandum of Understanding signed in April between the United States and Iran. We don't know 100% what's there. And therefore, this leaves space open for wide interpretations or misinterpretations. Same here. We did see back at the beginning of the year, we did see a text of the Donald Trump 20-point plan, and the United States is pressing Israel hard not to say no right now on the basis of saying, you signed the 20-point plan, we just expect you to implement it. That White House officials have been saying that. But in reality, we don't know what was signed in Cairo yesterday. We don't know who did the signing. And clearly, we're already seeing that Israel, that was not a party to the negotiations, and Hamas, that is a crucial party, are in disagreement. And in the middle is this board of peace that for now has been a rather ineffectual body. Israel just voted to allow them into the Gaza Strip mere days ago. They're not even in place yet. And so there we are, in this sort of shrug emoji.
Yeah, Donald Trump hosted a call with reporters and he was asked, look, how hopeful are you that Israel will agree to withdraw from Gaza once Hamas is disarmed? And I realise there's a sort of contention there as to whether Hamas have actually agreed to that or not. And Trump said that they would be very disappointed. Sorry, the official on behalf of Donald Trump said they'd be very disappointed if Israel didn't agree. Does Netanyahu care about disappointing Donald Trump?
Well, that's another huge question. Prime Minister Netanyahu's on something of a high wire act right now regarding Donald Trump. He was in Washington just yesterday and meeting Donald Trump the day before, supposedly because he went to attend the funeral of Senator Lindsey Graham. But in reality, Prime Minister Netanyahu is really cornered right now. He's facing elections on October the 27th. He's not in a good position in terms of his popularity in Israel or the polls, and he was counting on the support of Donald Trump. He was counting on the support of Donald Trump to such an extent that I have to tell you, Israeli journalists, serious Israeli journalists, speaking to U.S. officials during these 2 days of the Israeli visit in Washington, were actually asking White House officials, do you think Donald Trump will endorse Netanyahu? So it's, there was this vast expectation that basically Donald Trump would be Benjamin Netanyahu's trump card for these elections. And that clearly is not happening. So Prime Minister Netanyahu has to, on the one hand, show his base, the hard nut of followers he still has, that he has the guts and the wherewithal to stand up and say no, even to an American president. On the other hand, he's got almost no one left. And so he is putting Israel in real jeopardy by deepening Israel's diplomatic isolation as the war still rages, we have to admit.
Noga, thank you very much for the context and from, really a sense of how people in Israel are responding to the news, that announcement from Donald Trump. Noga Tarnopolsky, the Israel and Palestine correspondent, speaking to us there from Jerusalem.